I want to show you a way to master equations that are quite complicated containing decimals. Now we're going to have to begin by reviewing some old information. It's not the worst thing to do. Remember the trick for multiplying and dividing by powers of 100? Well, in this case, multiplying by 100, I'm going to go to the right because it is multiplication. 2 places, because there's 2 zeros. And I'll have the answer. Now, for division, you do the same thing, except you go the other way. In this case, once again, 2 zeros. I'm going to go 2 to the left. And I'll have the answer. Let's do another one. I'm going to divide this case by 10 to the 1, so I'm only going to go over 1 digit, and I'll have the answer. Very simple, isn't it? As long as it's a power of 10. In this case, I'll have to go over 3 places. Now remember, and this is the big kicker, when I go over and I'm at the end, I'm not going to write that decimal point. And that's the way I like numbers. No decimals, no fractions. Now we're going to incorporate that little trick, the multiplication part of it, and one other that we had learned before to solve equations with decimals.
Houston, we have a problem.
Remember fractional equations? You didn't like them, did you? Why? Because they had fractions. So what we did was, rather than solving with the fractions, the first thing we did was get rid of the fractions.
Now what am I gonna do?
Well, the guy that got rid of those fractions
I could be of some assistance.
was your old buddy,
LCD man.
LCD man. You have to know how to find that LCD. Make sure it's low so it's easy to work with. And that LCD, that least common denominator of all the fractions in the equation, will cancel out the denominators and you won't have fractions anymore. And that was our general strategy. For instance, in this problem,
How about little fires, Scarecrow?
we multiplied everybody by the least common denominator. Now we did it on the left, so we have to do it on the right. Watch what happens. The LCD, or least common denominator, in this case is, instead of LCD, we write what it is. It's 6, the least common denominator of 2 and 3. Now 6 cancels with 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and I have 3x. Note, no fraction. 6 cancels with 3, and I have 2x. Note, no fraction. Still have to multiply over here by 6 to be fair. But now I have an equation that I know how to solve, hopefully, because there's no fractions.
What happened?
Well, the LCD removed all the fractions. I'll add the common terms and then divide by 5 to get x alone. And I have an answer.
You're absolutely correct.
So I hope you see that really our first step to solving these fractional type equations was to get rid of the fractions. And that's what we're going to do with decimal equations. We're going to use the same idea. We're going to get rid of the decimals. Now I only see one decimal, and it's only one decimal place. So if I multiply by 10, remember what my trick is, multiply by 10 moves the decimal over to the right and it won't be a decimal anymore. But if I do it to him, I have to do it to everybody. So I'm going to multiply everybody by 10. This is going to give me 70y. At least it's not a decimal. This is going to give me, move it over 1, 244. And then this is going to give me 30y. Now there's no problem. Solve it. Well, how do we solve it? Let's get all the y's on one side and get y by itself. I'll divide by negative 40 and y will be, it's a tough division, but that's the answer, negative 6.1.
Excellent.
Okay, let's do another.
Yes, you're in deep dough now.
Now in this case, I've got decimals all over the place.
Excuse me, Professor Brainiac.
Some of them have 1 decimal place, some of them have 2 decimal places. What I tell you is multiply by the number that's going to fix everybody, and that's going to be the highest power of 10. In this case, the highest power of 10 is 100. So I'm going to multiply everybody by 100, or move the decimal place over 2 places for everybody. This one's going to move over 2. Of course, I'll need a 0, and I'll have 40x. This one's going to move over 2, and it'll be nicely just a 72. Remember, when it's at the end, you don't write it. And this one will end up being
Marvelous. Yes, indeed. Simply marvelous.
just negative 8. Now you should know how to solve this, but let's finish it off. I'll get x alone by subtracting 72 from both sides, and 40x will equal negative 80. Now I got to get x alone, so I'll divide both sides by 40, and this one comes out nice. And there's your answer.
Genius. That's what it is. Sheer genius.
So note our strategy for solving decimal equations. We multiply by the correct power of 10, the highest power of 10, to get rid of all the decimals before we even begin. And then we just solve it normally.
Uh-oh.
So get to your homework and start practicing that.